I met someone younger, and they asked me where I was from, and I said I'm from Vietnam, and they were like, "Oh, were you born here?" And I was like, "No, I'm one of the Vietnamese boat refugee people." And they had this blank stare on their face. I was like, "You do know what that is, right?" "Oh, yeah, 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 of course, of course." I'm like, "No, no, you do know what that is, right?" We're on chapter 7, Too Soon Old, Too Late Smart. Be bold, and mighty forces will come to your aid. I will tell you that I have realized that that is true. In life, so many people live life so meekly. Jim Rohn says people set goals, but they set such lowly, miserable goals that, like one guy is like, "Jim, I just want to, get up and be able to pay my measly bills this month." Like that's a goal. It's just not a very good goal. So I think like fortune favors the bold, the courageous, So number 7, be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid. When I was young, I spent some time at war. I went to Vietnam for a variety of reasons, the most important of which was to find out if I was brave. That's interesting. I was also depressed at the time, so perhaps there was a bit of death wish thrown in. In any event, I supported the war. We had to stop communism somewhere, or so I believed. Some combat experience also would help my budding career in military medicine. I was a newly promoted major at the time, and so I was assigned as regimental surgeon to the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment, Black Horse, a 5,000-man unit operating northwest of Saigon. That's interesting. So he was a surgeon and a psychiatrist. The commanding officer was George S. Patton III. I didn't know that. You may have heard of his father. His father was George S. Patton, huh? I did my best to fit in. I spent a lot of time in helicopters, was shot at some, received a Bronze Star for pulling a couple of enemy soldiers out of a difficult spot. But the more I saw of that war, the less proud I became of my participation in it. What we were doing there was so overwhelmingly destructive to that country and its people that it was absurd to pretend that we were fighting on their behalf. We also didn't show them much respect. To us, they were gooks or slopes or dinks. I just got tired of it. And the costs to us were astronomical. The number of dead Americans eventually reached 58,000. I did not know that. 58,000. You can read their names on a black granite wall in Washington. I remember the moment when I knew we were going to lose the war. Frustrated by our inability to find the elusive Viet Cong, we had developed a top secret program to locate enemy troop concentrations. It was called a people sniffer. A people sniffer. A device sensitive to the presence of ammonia in urine. It could be hung from a helicopter flying low over the jungle. When a high reading was identified, artillery was directed at the area. One evening in 1968, I attended an end-of-the-day regimental briefing where an infantry captain was describing a sweep through the jungle. He and his men had encountered something they could not explain. Buckets of urine hanging from the trees! Patton and his intelligence officer exchanged looks of chagrin as they silently acknowledged that we were firing artillery at $250 a round at buckets of urine all over Vietnam. It seems funnier now than it did then. Anyway, I had had enough. On Easter Sunday, 1969, I passed among the guests at a change of command ceremony for Colonel Patton and handed everyone copies of something I had written the night before. I called it the Black Horse Prayer. And here comes the Black Horse Prayer. God, our Heavenly Father, hear our prayer. We acknowledge our shortcomings and ask thy help in being better soldiers for thee. Grant us, O Lord, those things we need to do thy work more effectively. Give us this day a gun that will fire 10,000 rounds a second, a napalm that will burn for a week. Help us to bring death and destruction wherever we go, for we do it in thy name, and therefore it is meet and just. We thank thee for this war, fully mindful that, whilst it's not the best of all wars, it is better than no war at all. We remember that Christ said, I came not to send peace, but a sword. And we pledge ourselves in all our works to be like him. Forget not the least of thy children as they hide from us in the jungles. Bring them under our merciful hand that we may end their suffering. In all things, O God, assist us, for we do our noble work in the knowledge that only with thy help can we avoid the catastrophe of peace that threatens us ever. All of which we ask in the name of thy Son, George Patton. Amen. Oh my God. What a prayer. He was clearly being sarcastic. But how ironic is that we're reading about this Vietnam War and the news domination today was about this new Israel attack. It's so bizarre, like for millennia, for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, like we have not learned how to live in peace. There were some high-ranking people there, including General Crichton Abrams, the commander of U.S. forces in Vietnam. There were also a lot of journalists. One of them asked Patton if that was the official unit prayer. I was arrested, and an investigation was launched to see if I was a candidate for court-martial. They decided against it. It would have been inconvenient to try a West Point graduate who could testify firsthand about war crimes. So they sent me home as an embarrassment to the command. I subsequently resigned from the Army and worked with many others to end the war. We were not immediately successful. It took 4 years and 25,000 additional American deaths before the last U.S. soldiers finally left. It's like fucking Afghanistan, man. 26 years later, I went back to Vietnam, accompanied by 17 members of my old unit, as well as my son Michael, whom I had found there as an infant in an orphanage during the war. Wow, I did not know that. He adopted a little Vietnamese Michael, whom I had found there as an infant in an orphanage during the war. We visited the sites where we had lived and fought so long ago. Our guides included former North Vietnamese and Viet Cong soldiers who carried with them their own memories of the war. So these are the enemies that you were trying to kill because of their urine. They were friendly and welcoming. It was easy for them, I suppose. They had won. Nearly all traces of our having been there had been obliterated. Our biggest installation at Long Binh was being developed as an industrial park. Half the current population of Vietnam was not even alive during the war. Young people we met as we revisited the scenes of our struggles must have wondered what we were looking for, not knowing what it was we remembered. We carried the burdens of time and fate, and our hearts were weighted with the knowledge of those who could not return and whose stories were lost to all except those who loved them. As I stood on the site of that 1969 change of command ceremony, I remembered the anger and the doubt and the fear I felt on that Easter Sunday when, with the help of a prayer, I was reborn. Makes me want to cry. As I stood on the site of the 1969 change of command ceremony, I remembered the anger and the doubt and the fear I felt on that Easter Sunday when, with the help of a prayer, I was reborn. Be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid. That is a touching chapter, man. Wow. Be bold, and mighty forces will come to your aid. I mean, I just don't understand, how does Gaza Strip, how does Hamas, how does Palestine really think they're going to beat Israel? It's just bizarre to me. And, the other, about a month ago, I met someone younger, and they asked me where I was from, and I said, I'm from Vietnam, and they were like, oh, were you born here? And I was like, no, I'm one of the Vietnamese boat refugee people. And they had this blank stare on their face. I was like, you do know what that is, right? Oh, yeah, of course. I'm like, no, you do know what that is, right? And, it's just the most bizarre thing to think that I'm coming up to this generation, this younger generation. Like, I don't think Erica's younger brother, who's 25, Matt, like, I don't think he really understands the Vietnam War. I don't think he understands or even cares about, refugees, or that I was a refugee. I don't think he knows, and it's so bizarre. Such a major, crucial event that shaped my life to everyday people now. And I'm not talking babies. Matt's 25, Nisa's like 26, year olds. Like, Matt's like the manager at Big R. So if you want to go talk to a manager these days because you want to return an item or you're not happy with some service, you're going to be talking to a 25, 30-year-old, and they don't care. Like the Vietnam War did not affect them. The boat refugee people did not affect them. There's and that was the fall of Saigon was 1975. There are people now who don't remember 9/11, 2001 here in the United States. And this attack on Israel is being compared to like that's their version of 9/11. Who knows? It could be the news outlets kind of working this up. Man, how much do you love this book? What I want to do real quick is, now that we've done 7 days, I want to reread the first number 1 for your notes, in case you've forgotten. If the map doesn't agree with the ground, the map is wrong. And that talked about our mental maps of how we think our lives are, but the ground is not, your environment's not the way you want it, then your thinking is wrong. Your mental map is wrong. Number 2, the chapter that stopped me from speed reading, that made me like slow down and read this book. Number 2, we are what we do. And in that chapter, it's like, dude, your children don't owe you anything, let it go, Number 3, it is difficult to remove by logic an idea not placed there by logic in the first place. I mean, it's worth reading again. It's like, I think that talked about family history, right? And how you keep doing the same things over and over again because it was like learned, maybe. The statute of limitations has expired on most of our childhood traumas is number 4. Number 5, any relationship is under the control of the person who cares the least. That's talking about divorces and stuff and relationships. Number 6, yesterday's feelings follow behavior. Can anyone remember what is yesterday's? Feelings follow behavior. Oh.
Hey, Dr. V and baby Milani here for a quick word for our sponsor, Resellers program. Resellers is the quick, easy way for average people like you and me to make a free $750 a month without hosting parties or doing sales. It's not an MLM. There's no credit check to see if you can be approved for it. It's a free $750 a month. Check it out, www.ultimatemoneytree.com, or just text DRV to my friend Jerry at the number listed below.